Welcome back. Brian Calfano along with Nick Reed and Amy Blancett. Nick, of course, is over at KSGF 1041 as the morning show host, and Amy is the head of the Drew Lewis Foundation. They are both Ozarks First contributors, and here we are, guys, in our little cubbies, a little different setting than we're used to, but of course we're in the middle of a crisis, and that brings me to the topic for today. Usually we're talking about political issues on this segment, so let's get into the politics of coronavirus, if you will. And I'm wondering, at what point do you think it's appropriate to criticize those in charge? Because this is an ongoing and unfolding situation. This isn't something that happened over a few hours and now we're looking back. We're in the process of meeting this challenge. And of course, decisions are made at various levels of government to deal with the fallout. So when's it fair, Nick, to criticize folks who are in charge?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on who's in the room. And if you're talking about people that are actually wanting to do a legitimate assessment for the purpose of bettering things versus people that are just looking to make political points. Unfortunately, I think there is a vacuum of legitimate criticism because it's all hysterical politics. So, you know, I'm the sort of person I want to hear all sides, but one side has made it so clearly clear that it is just politics that I can't take anything of what they say and digest it. You know, I look at just the timeline of things and that the Trump administration had already activated the CDC to move forward on this while impeachment was still going on. The day that Mike Pence was holding a press conference on coronavirus, Chuck Schumer was holding one demanding that Michael Bolton be able to testify in the impeachment trial. The day that Trump said we need to stop travel from China, he was demonized by so many of these people that then once they realize the direction things are going, they start criticizing him and claiming he wasn't doing anything. And so it's clear, like all of those voices you can't even listen to. And it's sad because people are going to make mistakes. Trump's going to make mistakes. But when you delegitimize yourself as a critical observer or a participant, and instead of somebody that's just trying to score political points, then you get tuned out altogether. And that denies us any real good intellectual conversation.
Amy, what's your take on that?
That is a really interesting question on like when do we get to criticize? Because I think about myself as kind of in two roles. One is I'm the boss of a company, right? There's a nonprofit and I answer to a board and I answer to my staff. And right now, if I had not followed regulations and been proactive and had staff home, I would be criticized. If I had acted too soon, I would immediately be criticized. Like, would I have been given grace? And so we think about, okay, so you're at a political level. Aren't you controlling more? Shouldn't you have more grace? I don't understand why we would expect any less, right? We elected people into positions expecting them, based on previous things that they had done, to respond in our best interest. And I want them to respond as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, this segment isn't specifically about President Trump, but what about the president and his performance in all of this, Amy?
When we have individuals who have been, either at his side or giving him information about the risk, and he's chosen not to respond or to delay response. I mean, he has some of the individuals that are most knowledgeable when it comes to epidemiology and what a pandemic means. They were giving him advice and he chose not to follow it. And so it's things like that to where we need to criticize specific based on those types of behaviors versus I think individuals are getting in the weeds. And that's where Nick and I might actually agree in one area, is that the criticism, instead of it staying focused on what's at hand, it's very easy to begin to say, well, how do we spend this because we want an election to go a certain way?
Now let's talk about the governors. There's 50 of them, which means potentially 50 different approaches to dealing with this situation.
Well, it depends. Governor to governor. It's funny because some of them do what they're doing. It's clear what they're doing and why they're doing it. For example, the governor of Florida, and there was a great deal of criticism as to the allowance of spring break to occur. And it was essentially shut down, I think, the last hour of the last day. And people are, what was he thinking? Well, we all know what he was thinking. He has tremendous number of businesses that are completely reliant on that week. And we'll get it done, we'll get it over with, and the fallout from that will be less than the fallout of having all of those businesses go out. Same thing with Mardi Gras. But what happens is you have, for example, Mardi Gras, the governor and the mayor of New Orleans are now like, well, we had no idea that. Yes, you did. You made a decision. You weighed, do we take the do we risk it?
Amy.
There's a lot at play when we're talking about the information that we're receiving, how we're receiving it, and what political spin, the fact that this is happening around elections is really tainting the information that we are getting. So obviously when we see some governors that are out there doing amazing stuff, they're being proactive, they're using media in such a positive way for their campaign, but more importantly for their state. Those who are standing up and saying that the president doesn't get to choose or should not be able to choose who gets supplies and who gets to save the residents in their state, they're doing amazing things.
Guys, we're about out of time, but there's so much more to talk about, and we'll be getting at it over the next few weeks. So thanks again to both of you, Nick Reed and Amy Blanchett, our Ozarks First contributors. Folks, we'll be back after this.